Welcome everyone. आज के इस विश्लेषण में, we have finally reached the business end of the tournament, and the drama is at an absolute boiling point. After a full month of football and chaos, we have our epic final 8 teams locked in for the 2026 World Cup quarterfinals. We're going to break down some intense tactical insights, make our huge predictions, and figure out who actually survives this round.
Okay, let's dive into this. Are you guys prepared for the absolute madness of these upcoming matches? Because, man, it is officially milking time. We are in the final third of the competition, and the stakes could not possibly be higher. Pretty much all the predictions from the previous rounds have been completely blown out of the water, and we are left with a slate of games that are just incredibly difficult to call. Tonight's fight card looks incredible. We'll be looking at the 25% rule, France versus Morocco, Spain taking on Belgium, Norway clashing with England, Argentina up against Switzerland, and finally, locking in our final predictions.
All right, kicking things off with the 25% rule, the math of chaos. Before we even get into the specific teams, we gotta talk about the overarching narrative hook making this tournament so dangerously unpredictable. There's this wild trend defining the knockout stages. Exactly 25% of the games in the round of 16, literally 1 in every 4 matches, ended in a massive bracket-busting surprise. So logic tells us that at least one of these 4 quarterfinal matchups is gonna give us a massive upset. But which one?
To put that 25% rule into perspective, just look back at the sheer chaos of the last round. Norway miraculously sent Brazil packing. Switzerland completely eliminated a hugely hyped Colombia squad. And Belgium? They didn't just beat the USA. They gave them an absolute smash session, upgrading their intensity dramatically. This whole history of upsets is exactly why predicting these next 4 games is risky business.
Moving right along to our first big clash, France versus Morocco, the juggernaut against the relentless.
Right out of the gate, look, we have to acknowledge France as the incredibly heavy favorite here. I mean, this squad is practically a dictatorial army, probably the strongest international side we've seen since Germany back in 2014. Their attack is just unstoppable. But, and this brilliantly illustrates the contrast here, Morocco is an undefeated African powerhouse. You simply cannot disregard them. They are so resilient, relying on explosive standout talents like Unahi and Diaz, operating in these brilliant midfield pivots.
But man, you really have to respect what Morocco is up against. France has been on a terrifying, totally dominant run. They dismantled Senegal 3-1, crushed Iraq 3-0, completely tore Norway apart 4-1, cruised right past Sweden 3-0, and then somehow survived an absolute WWE-style WrestleMania main event ladder match against Paraguay. They are a total buzzsaw right now, whereas Morocco's run of penalty shootouts and narrow wins looks a lot less convincing on paper.
So, where is this game actually won or lost? The tactical battle happens right here. Morocco's striker, Saibari, going head-to-head with France's highly underrated, totally rock-solid defensive duo of Saliba and Upamecano. Morocco is definitely going to fight for possession. They won't just park the bus. But France's defense is almost impossible to crack. Honestly, I expect a super tight game, maybe even going to extra time. But I'm predicting a narrow 3-2 win for the French.
Next up, we've got Spain versus Belgium. Defense versus chaos.
Now, remember that 25% upset rule we just talked about? Well, this right here is a classic clash of styles, where an upset could totally brew. Spain comes in having conceded literally 0 goals, untouchable backline, flawless. On the flip side, Belgium is bringing pure, chaotic, high-scoring energy. After kind of a slow start to the tournament, they suddenly dropped 5 goals on New Zealand and showed a massively upgraded attacking intensity against the USA.
We really need to praise Spain's unappreciated backline. You've got Marc Cucurella, Emerick Laporte, Pau Cubarsí, and Pedro Porro, and together, they have been an absolute wall. They've dealt so brilliantly with high-paced wingers from dynamic teams like Uruguay and Portugal. That being said, their midfield can look a little awkward in possession, relying really heavily on Rodri to keep them stable.
The bottom line for this clash? Belgium absolutely has the firepower and the sheer intensity to break Spain's clean sheet. But Spain's overall quality should see them pull through a really tough fight. Stopping Belgium from scoring will be a nightmare, but I've got Spain winning this in normal time with a comfortable scoreline.
All right, third quarterfinal. Norway versus England. The carry job versus the god midfield.
The narrative going into this fixture is honestly borderline ridiculous. You are looking at a monumental one-man show going up against a beautifully balanced, completely overpowering squad. Norway is only here because of Erling Haaland's unbelievable 7-goal carry job, but behind him, that defense is paper thin. England, meanwhile, brings a literal god-level midfield that just applies relentless, suffocating pressure all game long.
The crucial point is exactly how England will exploit those gaps. With a midfield trio of Henderson, Rice, and Jude Bellingham, who has arguably been the absolute best player in this tournament, England is just going to suffocate Norway's possession. Norway's center backs are prone to these little brain fades under pressure, making poor tackling and marking decisions, so while Haaland might randomly snatch a goal out of nowhere, England's midfield dominance is going to secure them the win.
Moving to our final quarterfinal matchup, Argentina versus Switzerland. Messi versus the low block.
Okay, this one might end up being the most frustrating match of the entire bracket. Argentina has survived purely on these iconic, dramatic, Messi-led comebacks, but they've shown some real vulnerability to counterattacks. Then you have Switzerland, who somehow survived their last match despite creating 0 big chances. Literally 0. They completely rely on a stubborn defensive masterclass to just kill the opponent's attacking rhythm.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the exact tactical term being thrown around to describe Switzerland's setup against Colombia, haram ball. It is this hyper-defensive, low-block style of football. It relies completely on extreme game management, frustrating the opponent to the point of tears, and just happily dragging the whole thing to penalties without taking a single attacking risk.
But there is a massive tactical trap here. If Switzerland just sits back in that low block, Argentina's midfield is going to continuously ping crosses in and completely dismantle them. Sitting too deep against this Argentina side is quite literally just inviting Lionel Messi for a feast. Switzerland has to maintain a mid-block to try and exploit Argentina's counterattack vulnerability. It's going to be a very close, uncomfortable game for the Argentines, but they are still the favorites to advance.
Finally, let's lock it in. The final predictions, revealing the bracket. So we've broken down the tactics, the strengths, and the glaring vulnerabilities of all 8 teams. Based on everything we've looked at today, here are the final projected matchups. We are staring down a colossal semifinal bracket, France taking on Spain in semifinal 1, and an equally massive clash between England and Argentina in semifinal 2. But pause for a second. Remember that 25% rule we talked about at the very start of our analysis?
Exactly 1 in 4 of these games is statistically destined to break our hearts and our brackets. Which brings us to the ultimate question for you. इनमें से कौन सी टीम करेगी सबसे बड़ा उलटफेर? Which of these teams is actually going to pull off the biggest upset? I'm honestly torn. Will Morocco shock the French juggernaut, or will Switzerland's frustrating defensive masterclass finally topple Argentina? Weigh the tactics, let us know your predictions down in the comments, and thank you guys so much for joining us for this explainer.